Welcome to chapter 30 of the book of Job. Job is treated with contempt. In the last chapter, Job mentioned how bad things were, and then before that it was how good things were before he was afflicted. To me, this chapter is one of the darker chapters in the Bible. We'll see as we go through it. It begins, I'll read a little in the Greek, and then we'll go through the chapter. Nini the katagelasan mu elachisti, nin nu thetusi me in meri, on exudenun tus pateras avton, us uk higisamin ine axius kinon ton emon nomadon. And now the least of them ridicule me. So now, after the good things in the last chapter that he had before, now he's going through this litany of what's happened to him now. And now the least of them ridicule me. Now they admonish me in turn, of whom I treated with contempt, the ones of their fathers, ones whom I did not esteem to be worthy of dogs of my grazing flocks, people that weren't high up on the level of Job and the people that had a lot of respect, the ones that he didn't respect actually, and now they don't even esteem him as anything. And indeed, what profit is the strength of their hands to me? It was destroyed of them to completion. In lack and hunger, one is barren, as the ones fleeing waterless yesterday in conflict and misery. So now all these things that happen in life and the disasters in the world. The ones breaking off the marine plant upon the sounding shore, whose marine plants were for their grain and were without honor, and being treated as worthless, lacking of every good thing. So this people apparently that were living on the shore and eating, I don't know, seaweed or something, and not looked up as, now they are different. It says, and they gnawed the roots of the trees because of great hunger. And thieves rose up against me, whom their houses were burrows of rocks. One's past life under wild stick dwellings shall yell in the midst of distinct places, sort of like the barbarians in the New Testament, where Paul ran into on the island after the shipwreck. They're sons of foolish ones, and have a name without honor, and fame extinguished from the earth. They're basically without honor. And now I am their harp. They're playing him, and me for a common topic, and they have me for a common topic. And they abhorred me, separating far from me, and from my face they spared not spittle. And they spit on Jesus. And a lot of these things, I see the attitude of the people at the time of Jesus, not respecting him in any way. For having opened his quiver, he afflicted me. I would imagine that his would be God. So he sees an affliction by God and sent away the bridle of my presence. And we'll go down to see what the bridle is in verse 11, the restraint of my presence. They rose up against me on the right hand of their offspring, and he stretched out his feet and opened against me with paths of their destruction. And the he, is that God? I would imagine it is. And he's seeing God is doing all this, being the author of all these bad things. And they obliterated my paths, for he took off my apparel, and his spear ran through me. And he has judged me as he wills. In griefs I am befouled. My griefs return. My hope was set out as if the wind, gone, and my deliverance as if a cloud, poof, no deliverance. And now my soul shall be poured out upon me, and days of griefs suffice me. And at night my bones burn and my nerves are parted. With great strength it took hold of my robe. As the cleft of my garment it compassed me. The griefs, I imagine. And you have esteemed me equal to clay. In earth and ashes is my portion. I have cried out to you, and you hear me not. They stood and contemplated me, which they did with Jesus on the cross, and you mounted against me mercilessly. You whipped me with a strong hand. Jesus was whipped, and God the Father allowed it. And you arranged against me with griefs, and threw me away from deliverance. For I know that death will obliterate me, for the house of every mortal is earth, the ground, the dirt. For if aught that I should be able to lay hands upon myself, or indeed beseech another, and he should do this to me, and I wept over every... So basically he's changing a little bit here. And I wept over every disabled man and moaned, beholding man in necessities. I waited for good things, and behold, bad days met with me. My belly erupted, and I shall not keep silent. Days of poorness anticipated me. I went moaning without a rein, any guidance, and have stood in the assembly crying out. I have become a brother of sirens, and these animals that lived in the wilderness, and a companion of ostriches. My skin is enveloped in darkness greatly, sunburnt, and the bones of mine from sweltering heat. And my harp turned into mourning, and my psalm into weeping for me. So we see this man crying out, going through all these terrible things. But is it only Job? No, it's to mankind on the whole. We have disasters in the world. Right now, there was a giant hurricane that hit Florida, one of the southern states in the United States, and many people are suffering with their houses wrecked and everything that they have destroyed. And if you think about that, that's horrible, because if you're just doing everything is going great, and then all of a sudden, whammo, you get hit by this kind of a storm or an earthquake or whatever type of a natural disaster, and you lose everything, well, that puts you in a pretty bad mood, and you can very easily, if you're walking with God, think that God, why is this happening to me? Why am I here? Why is everything collapsing? Why am I losing everything? So in other places in the world, not only the United States, you see these boats of immigrants trying to go across dangerous seas, and the boat capsizing and losing many people. And one man I was just watching, and he lost his family. They'd all drowned. He saw them drown. And so having God, if you don't have God and you blame God, well, that's not unusual. People do that. But if you don't walk with God anyway, I suppose your complaint wouldn't be too as valid as if you were walking with him and all these things happen. You go, well, why me? I'm walking with doing the things that you would have. Then there's the disasters on the personal level. I just read recently where this high school football player was tackled or something, and he was paralyzed from the neck down. And that's a horrible situation. I've seen people like that as I worked in the hospital years ago. And you can be laying there all of a sudden. Before you were a great athlete running around, and now you're just sitting there looking at a TV or a ceiling of a hospital room. And imagine having that and then living for who knows how many years like that, it would be horrible, just horrible. And I could see where you could cry out to God, and why is this happening to me? And then you go into old age, and you're used to doing many things for yourself, but all of a sudden the old age catches up with you, and you start losing different abilities that you have, maybe a blindness. People, when they get older, lose their sight, and you're used to doing so many things, and then all of a sudden now you can't see anything. You're in the dark and walking with God, and that happens. You go, why is that? Why are you allowing that to happen to me? Now, these things can cause a defection from God. Some people would say, well, I've been walking with you and you let all these things happen, then I don't want you in my life anymore because you're not doing what I think you should be doing. Now, this defection on a personal level, I believe, is happening right now on a large level with people defecting from God. And it's called the great defection, or the defection. And we see it in 2 Thessalonians 2, where it begins, "Now we ask you, brothers, concerning the arrival of our Lord Jesus Christ and our assemblage unto him," like the rapture, "for you to not be quickly shaken of the mind, nor to be alarmed, neither by spirit, nor by word, nor by letter, as by us, as that the day of the Christ is present. Let not any completely deceive you in not one manner, for unless the defection should come first." There it is, a defection. So I see today so many churches are closing up. People, the news says that Christianity is on the decline. In another 10 years, there won't be hardly any Christians left. I could see that happening because it's the defection. And he says, unless the defection should come first, and the man of sin should be uncovered, the son of destruction, the one being an adversary and elevating himself above all, being called God, our object of worship. So as for him to sit in the temple of God as God, exhibiting himself that he is God. Now, some people would say, well, the temple hasn't been built in Jerusalem, but very easily Israel could take over the Dome of the Rock Mosque and turn it into a temple. And there he would be going into there. "Do you not remember that still being with you, I said these things to you? And now, the one constraining you, for the uncovering him in his own time, for the mystery of lawlessness already operates." See, now we're in the lawless period of time. You look at it and see it all over the world in the news, not only in the United States. "Only there is the one constraining just now, until he should be from out of the midst." So it's been being constrained. He's not able to come out, but he's from the midst. The midst of what? Well, I believe the midst of the Jews. "And then the lawless one will be uncovered, whom the Lord will consume by the breath of his mouth, and will render the grandeur of his arrival useless." Now, it doesn't stop there. So now we see the great defection happening possibly now. I believe it is. And then it gets worse, unfortunately. Then we go into the book of Revelation. After we are said they're gathered together. So we need to stay with the Lord even through this terrible time. Otherwise, what happens afterwards will happen to the one that's still alive. And that is throughout the book of Revelation. The second seal talks about pieces taken from the earth. And the sixth seal, there will be martyrs for Christ. So the Christians will die, probably Christian believers after the assemblage of us. In verse 6:16, then it says, "And they say to the mountains and to the rocks, fall upon us and hide us from the face of the one sitting upon the throne and from the anger of the Lamb." So God is now angry with the world, is going to pour out his anger on wrath on the earth. We see in Revelation 7, verse 14, a great affliction it's called. And then in 8:7 it says a third of the earth is incinerated, 1/3 of the earth. And in 8:9, 1/3 of the creatures in the sea will die. And then in 8:11, an asteroid will hit the earth called Absinthium, and a third of the waters, the rivers and so forth, will be poisoned. People then will be tormented for 5 months by these locust-type creatures that are have scorpion tails, attack only humans. And that's in 9:5 of Revelation. And then in 9:15, a third of mankind, or men, will be killed by angels at the Euphrates River. A third of mankind. And then we had a third before. So not very many people are going to be living through this period. And then the devil on the earth in chapter 12, verse 12. So now, that's all pretty bad, isn't it? Well, it's still not the worst. Unfortunately, the last 7, I guess you would call them plagues, in verse 16 are mentioned. And sores on people. Every creature dies in the sea. Every creature dies in the sea. No more fish. Rivers become blood. So now, even after what happened before, the earth will be scorched by fire, and darkness, sores, and misery will occur throughout mankind. And then the battle of Armageddon, where greatest war ever. And then an earthquake and great hail, where many, many people will be killed. So here we see the beginning with this man that is going through a lot of terrible things, and he sees that God is in control, but yet, what can he do? He could curse God, like his wife said, or he can stay with God. And we'll see what he does as we go on through. Next video seminar, Job's covenant, and we'll find out what that is. But we just need to know that now we have a chance of not experiencing any of these terrible dark times that are going on. Yes, right now are dark and you might have personal problems, but the thing is that we just need to bear with them the best we can and know that our Redeemer, Jesus Christ, has died and suffered like us, like mankind, but he rose and he's going to take us with him and are in this gathering of the people that it talks about in 2 Thessalonians, which we can look forward to. So I just pray that you would, and I would stay strong in spite of all these things. Our next video seminar, again, we'll find out what Job's covenant is about. Hope you'll join us. Till then, God bless.